Behind every active duty service member is a family that is signed up to walk the journey right alongside them. Not in uniform, but still in every way that counts. They move when the military says move. They wait when the military says wait. They build a life, pack it up, and build it again. Again and again.
My spouse is in the military, and that means we move a lot, and I'm alone a lot. So I've been unable to get a lot of career traction because of those moves. I've also been often underemployed because we might have been in a country where I couldn't work legally.
Families face the unique challenge of moving every couple of years, and they can find themselves on a wait list for most or all of their tour.
Careers are interrupted. Childcare can be out of reach. Support networks are rebuilt from scratch every couple of years. This is what day-to-day military family life often looks like. And when these families are stretched thin, so is the force. A warfighter who knows their family is supported can focus on the mission. One who doesn't, can't.
America's national security is directly connected to the well-being of the families behind the force. A distracted, exhausted, or unsupported family means a distracted service member.
May is Military Appreciation Month. And this year, we wanted to go beyond the thank you to ask what it actually takes to support the families who make our armed forces possible. To learn who is responsible for getting that right, and what it looks like when they do. Because readiness starts at home. This is Empathy Affect, the Forsmarsh Media podcast that explores the human side of government. I'm Melissa Sosinski, and today we're joined by Stephen Simmons, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of War for Military, Community, and Family Policy. He oversees and advocates for the programs and policies that support military families across every stage of their service. After spending 17 years in the Marine Corps as a site commander, operations officer, and retention officer, he's lived and breathed what happens when family support fails and what becomes possible when it doesn't. We'll talk about what military families actually need, how the U.S. military listens to them, what readiness looks like when it starts at the dinner table, and why the culture at the center of this moment in military leadership is not something you just build at the base. It's something you build at home. Steve, it's a pleasure to have you on Empathy Affect to share how your office supports military families and builds the kind of resilience that keeps our force ready.
Well, Melissa, thank you so much for having me. Just so thankful you let me grace your show's presence and get to talk to you about military families and the broader community that support them.
Of course. So many people see the military through the lens of service members in uniform. When you just think of people who are deployed, when you think of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. But the story is so much bigger than that. When you think about military families, what do you see that others might not fully understand?
Well, Melissa, I'm so glad you're asking this question because when we look at the military, I think we see jets, planes, bombs, and those things are awesome. But what a lot of folks don't always see is that family behind them. Our military families are incredibly strong. They're incredibly resilient. They face a lot of challenges by nature with the military lifestyle. But through all that, they persevere, and there's incredible strength that they display day in and day out, whether that's on that long deployment or just the daily disruptions to life that usually are not as predictable as their civilian counterparts. And and when we talk about military families, it's not always just mom, dad, and kids. You may see grandparents, you may see cousins, you may see that extended family that is near and far. So, we say families in a very, very broad term because there's so many loved ones that are very connected and deeply connected to that service member, but also their families. And they see and bear the brunt of everything that family faces, and they're there for them. So, we want to empower the military family, but we also want to support those that surround them to give that fantastic support. Getting a little bit more deeper into this, though, our families play a very strategic role in our nation's defense. Readiness starts at home. And, you've probably heard Secretary Hegseth talk about the warrior ethos. Well, the warrior ethos starts at home as well. It's not an 8 to 5 ethos that you turn on or turn off. It's supported, it's fostered, it incubates at home. And so those families play a very strategic role in our military readiness. Because of that, my office, Military Community and Family Policy, or MCFP, I'll try to not throw too many acronyms around here today. I know we can do that in the government a lot, but our office supports our warfighters and families with the policies and programs because we want them to be absolutely successful. And I think it's not just about supporting the warfighter and their family, but sustaining that lifestyle so they can thrive no matter what challenge comes their way.
Yeah, you clearly come at this with a lot of passion, and I know that you work at the policy level, but since your work touches the daily lives of so many families around the world, you were mentioning too how families are so key to readiness. I love how, we're not looking at the warfighter in a vacuum. They have families, we all have families. So being able to support families matters a lot. So since you're so passionate about this, what drew you personally to the mission of supporting military community and families?
Yeah, Melissa, and I'll say I'm incredibly passionate about it for a couple reasons. And we were a military family for 17 years. I saw how, my service directly impacted my family. I'd say they're better for it, but I also know that there's challenges and sacrifices they face. So like at a very personal level, I'll say I'm very driven to support military families because we were a military family, and I know just where those challenges lie. And I would want somebody at my level when I was serving to be laser focused on fixing those issues and addressing those challenges. So I want to make sure that I do the same for them and give back. But I think largely, speaking to kind of personal experience, when I was in the Marine Corps, I worked a very unique role in retention. And that was, working on keeping Marines in the service. It's one thing to recruit somebody. It's a whole other thing to retain someone after the fact. And so, I would travel around trying to retain Marines in the service. But universally, when they chose to leave, 99% of the time, it was not because of them, it was their family. And when a warfighter usually chooses to serve initially, that's a choice that they make. But when they choose to continue to serve, it's a choice their family makes. And so, what I saw oftentimes was how do we, not just sell the military lifestyle to the warfighter, but we have to sell it to the family as well and make sure that family, is taken care of and has all the resources that they see that this is something they want to continue to serve. And so that experience really kind of brought me to see full picture just how critical support for that family is and how much that weighs on those long-term career decisions for our warfighters.
So this work has always been personal to Steve. And while his own family had their own challenges, the families his office serves are anything but uniform. Military life varies depending on where you are in it, and the challenges that come with it are just as varied.
I would say a family that's newly joined the military, has served for 2 or 3 years, and has 2 children under the age of 5, their needs are going to be very childcare specific and how to help a young family thrive, while maybe a family that's served for 22, 23 years, very different set of challenges, but equally important as they kind of come to the end of their career as well. So we want to be able to support both those families. And that's 2 of thousands of unique situations. And just when we think we've solved all of them, there's a new situation that we uncover, or there's a new family that's joining the military and we've got to solve it for them as well. I'll talk about a couple of these high-level challenges, though, that we see. And the first one is there's a cycle of transition in military life. And this really is centered around the permanent change of station, the PCS move. And typically military families relocate every 2 to 3 years. That's just part of the military lifestyle. It's been since really the modern military for the last 150 years. What we see, though, is this transition point where they move every 2 to 3 years that impacts the kids. They have to restart school. They have to make new friends. They have to learn a new neighborhood or new styles. Yeah, it's tough. Anybody who's moved as a kid knows how tough those moves are. Well, military kids have to do that every 2 to 3 years. And the good news is they come out very, very resilient at 18 because usually they're already used to some change and transition in life, and they actually do very well as adults. But it's very, very challenging, tough on them as kids. And especially at those teenage years, 10 to 17, that's a tough, very impressionable time. So we want them to succeed. On the other side of the equation is the spouse. And every 2 to 3 years, that spouse is having to find a new career and restart a job. And so what we see, and we're doing a lot of work right now as a department to tackle spouse unemployment and spouse underemployment. But for our spouses, what we see is they have to restart their jobs every 2 to 3 years. And it's a wicked problem. It's a vicious cycle, but you move, spouse puts their job, their career on hold to get the kids settled, get them into the next school or next care. And then about 6 months later, they start to look for work. And what happens is they either find work, but they're underemployed because they're constantly starting fresh, starting new, or they're having constant breaks. So they never really break out of like that entry level job. So we're doing a lot of work right now to tackle the spouse employment issue as well as expand our access to childcare. And we're very excited about the work that's being done there. It's transformational, what's happening, but it starts with identifying that root cause, and PCS is one of those, that permanent change of station. And I'm very excited. The secretary early on came out with a memo directing the services to reduce PCS tempo. And so as that continues to evolve, we're going to see PCS tempo reduce, and we're excited to support each of the services as they implement that. We believe that's going to have a lasting effect, but we're going to reduce the impact of PCS, and really we want to PCS-proof the military family. And by doing this, what we can do is allow for a seamless transition of childcare, seamless transition of spouse employment. So we're excited to continue to work in this area. The other area is there is a lot of hurdles, and I don't think this is unique to the military, but we see it a lot, is nutrition readiness continues to be something that we're very, very focused on. And this is a younger population, I'd say, under 25, which is the bulk of the military. I doubt you or I probably ate as healthy as we should have back, when we were that age. But we're really working with our warfighters and their families to, adopt healthier eating standards and make it easy for them to access nutritional meals, prepare nutritional meals. We want to give them access to, have a fresh meal that they can prepare quickly, cheaper, and better eating to ultimately lead to a healthier lifestyle.
From nutrition to childcare and career navigation, Steve's office is holistically focused on the variety of needs and challenges military families face. His office tracks families across every major transition point, before and after a move, through the full arc of deployment, and into reintegration when the warfighter comes home. And increasingly, they're using real-time data to get ahead of those moments rather than responding to them after the fact.
We've been on a transformational journey since I got here on adopting a lot more of a data-centric approach to everything we do. And, we're actively hiring a lot of data scientists right now on my team. We're building up how we approach data and use data to actually not just see how we did last year or how we're doing right now, but how we're going to be in the future. And I'll give like a small example, but what we want to do is when a military family is ordered to move, we want to be proactive and actually start to outreach them 60, 90 days, 120 days out, and actually talk to them early on and reach that spouse and say, we see you're going to move. Can we help you find a new job? Here are resources available. Here's coaching. Here is a job board. Here are 5 companies that are hiring in your area that are committed to hiring military spouses. So we see all of these as a fantastic opportunity to be proactive outreach, which we believe as we engage via that data, that's only going to enhance the military readiness and smooth over that transition. So it's probably a good opportunity, talking about how we generate this data. We've got a series of leadership tenets within my organization. We stood these up, but one of our favorites is we are the feedback mechanism. And we approach this, we engage with military spouses constantly. We engage with warfighters. We engage with kids. I was actually at a Purple Star school event yesterday talking to military kids. And it's important to get that feedback, but we also get that feedback in number of surveys that we offer, everything else that we do day to day, just usage rates and things like that. And that really helps us formulate a very good picture on what the needs of our force currently are. So then we can be more proactive and I'd say more agile in how we deliver support and services to our families.
Yeah, I love the fact that you brought up that you're data driven, that you have different feedback mechanisms, because we know that policies tend to be the most effective when they reflect the real experiences of the people they serve. How do you then take that data, especially since you mentioned earlier that no one military family's challenge looks like the other families? Everyone are at different points in their lives with children, with their careers. How do you then take those feedback mechanisms to iterate and improve on the programs that you deliver to these families?
Yeah, and Melissa, it's such a good question because like how we do it, but I'd also come back with how fast we do it. So one thing we've been focused on is really taking current use trends and turning that to a point of like having a persistent like data reporting where it's real time, we see results. And, I think, this is probably a good chance to highlight a few of our flagship programs that we offer already. So Military One Source, any listeners in the audience who are in the military, I hope they are aware of and use Military One Source. If they're not, this is my shameless plug for that. But Military One Source is a website as well as a call center that we offer. And this is, the 24/7 helpline, crisis line, call it what you will. But if you are in the military and you need help, pick up the phone, call, get on the website, and there are resources available there. And it can be everything from needing to connect to a counselor to, I need a new dog sitter. And, there's resources for every step of the way. So we use all that Military One Source usage data, and we're actively monitoring that now, which is fantastic. So we see, when people are calling in, why they're calling in, where they're calling in from. So, everything could be working great, but there may be one base or installation where it's not. And that really helps us dial in. The other resources we have out there, we do have military family life counselors, which, they work hand in hand with our units, and really have expanded our reach, but they're non-medical counselors. So, important to that is that they're not taking notes. They're, free, anonymous. Go see them, go talk to them. They're there to help. And, I would say they're there to help with the little things so they don't become big things. And, I'd much rather, go get counseling. Everybody needs it. I support it, but use the MFlex in your area. And these are fantastic resources. They're spread across our bases. We have them embedded in schools now. They're placed throughout, and we're constantly kind of moving them around because obviously, we'll see where capacity and demand need to align, but we see their usage rates as well. So that's a really big piece. And then, the last one, financial counseling and EFMP support. So we have financial counselors on every installation, but we also have support for our exceptional family member program, which are our military families who have children dependents with special needs. And phenomenal program. We're doing a lot to make that more robust right now, but we're very in tune with how those programs are being utilized, and we see where there's gaps, and then we can address. And so I think very excited about this because what we've adopted is instead of a backwards-looking view, we're actually taking a forward-looking view with our data and allowing us to move resources and support where they're needed. But throughout all that, what's been amazing is it's actually made us far, far more agile. And I've gotten feedback recently from the White House. One of the projects we're working on, we're outpacing for the private sector for the first time ever.
Wow.
Which when they told us the company we outpaced and you all use it every day, I was like, hey, that's phenomenal. But we did it because we're using data and we're being more agile, and we're pulling that real time usage data.
Yeah, that's really fabulous that you're able to, see where the many programs that you're implementing are reaching people, not reaching people, evaluating how they're doing, and then, as you said, being more proactive about, better meeting their needs. Are there any other programs or services that people may not realize exist your office provides, but make a really big difference in the day-to-day lives of military families that you haven't mentioned yet?
Well, Melissa, you're giving me a toss-up, and I probably could keep you here all day because we offer so many programs. And I'm excited to talk about our programs that we offer anytime. There's a couple. Let me talk real quick about our spouse career programs, especially because I think this is one we're really trying to work on. And we talked a little bit about the financial readiness piece earlier, but when we talk about spouse employment, it's so critical. It's 2026. The economic reality is both spouses work, whether you're government sector, private sector. So our military families should not be any different. And, what we see is spouse employment persistently is at about 20% across the board. Underemployment's much, much higher. So we recently stood up the Office of Spouse Employment. It's a director level office that reports directly to me, and they're focused on improving the spouse employment. But they offer several amazing programs that really support the military spouse. So, we've got one, it's called the Career Advancement Account. And this is really a scholarship opportunity for spouses to use. We are under executing. We've got lots of money in it, so everybody should apply. But it's really for them to go get licensure, get, any kind of training or anything. So, technical training so they can do a job, and which is amazing. It's called My CAA, but it's really good. The other piece we have is called Military Spouse Employment Partnership, or MCEP, and we're fixing to rebrand all of this. It'll be much easier to understand than the acronyms, but this is actually a partnership that we're working with private sector companies, and some governments actually have jumped in at local, state, and federal level. But as an MCEP partner, they're actually listing their jobs uniquely for military spouses on our own job website and job board. We're going to strengthen that right now to where those companies are actually committing as well to work together to not just hire talent, but retain talent. So when that military spouse moves, maybe they can't keep a job with company A, but because company B is in that area and also an MCEP partner, they're going to snatch them up immediately and, keep them employed throughout that PCS transition. So we're really excited about that. The last piece I'll highlight is we recently went from a pilot to a program, but it's the Military Spouse Career Accelerator Program, so MSCAP. And really what this is, for those of you in the audience who are familiar with Skill Bridge for our active duty warfighters, this is a fellowship program. We pay for you to go work at a company for 3 months. You get your foot in the door, and we're seeing tremendous success with that. Spouses who complete the fellowship, they're getting about a 80 to 90% job placement rate, with jobs starting between 70 and 80,000 a year. So these are, very strong jobs. I'd say target audience is probably mid-career level, but it's open to anybody who wants to apply and is qualified. Obviously, we know we've got spouses that range the gamut from, fresh out of high school all the way to postgraduate. But, it definitely bears repeating. Our spouses are tremendously well qualified. And, so we're making a lot of gains on that area right now. So there's some programs we offer on the spouse employment realm.
And spouse employment is just one piece of the puzzle. Steve's office also runs Plan My Move, a suite of tools on Military OneSource that walks families through every step of a relocation and connects them to resources at their next destination. And on base, commissaries and exchanges are undergoing a major transformation too, expanding fresh food options, adding online ordering and delivery, and reinvigorating the on-base shopping experience so that more families feel connected to their military community. And all of these collective programs and initiatives connect back to that bigger purpose. Supporting military families isn't just the right thing to do. It's what keeps our forces ready.
Families, they are the backbone of our military, and that readiness, it starts at home. But I would start with the principle of when we deploy a warfighter forward, when we take them forward and say, you're going to go deploy here, wherever here is, and that could be the Middle East, it could be the Pacific, it could be, you name the geographic zip code, because it changes overnight. We need them to go forward without looking over their shoulder, being concerned if their family's taken care of. And, I think, I talk about this a lot, but, there's a social contract that, the military member makes with us. They will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. But inherent to that is we're also making that commitment with them that we're going to take care of their family no matter what, and we'll be there for them, even if that warfighter passes. And, I've got, we even have casualty mortuary affairs, which darker side of things, but, if the unfortunate happens, we're there to support the surviving family and take care of them. And so, I bring that up only to say, like, that warfighter needs to go forward knowing that their family will be taken care of. And, we can't have them distracted. We can't have them looking over their shoulder, thinking about what's happening behind them when, they're facing a very dedicated enemy in front of them. And so, when we talk about that a lot, it's there's a lot that goes into family readiness. And, I think one of the first ones though is it's having a culture of readiness. Like, those families have to know that we be able to support that operational tempo. And when that warfighter gets asked to leave, it may not be predictable. And we're really seeing a transition right now of, back in, the last 20, 25 years of GWAT, we saw very predictable deployments. Usually our warfighters knew they were going to deploy, 6 months to at least a year out. And as a consequence, those families were usually able to prepare for it. Where now we see, very unpredictable, very different security environment. And because of that, we need our families to actually embrace almost a higher state of persistent readiness, that, they're ready to go. They have a plan. They've got a list of what all the logins, where to pay the bills, everything else. Like there's some very basics, but there's also some importance on, just, simple things. Again, childcare, for example, we have to make sure there's a plan for childcare. What happens if we have two service members that are a family, husband and wife, and what's the family care plan then? Are grandparents able to take care of the children while they're both deployed? Is it cousin, aunt, uncle? And so these are all things. And obviously there's, wills, powers of attorney, things like that have to go into this as well. So these are all very intricate details that we have to think about. But I think at the end of the day, it comes back to that family really embracing that warrior ethos, that warrior culture of being a part of this and understanding that, okay, this is happening. And it may not be a deployment. It may just be, an unscheduled training mission of, hey, surprise, you have to leave, tomorrow and fly here for 2 weeks. And those unplanned disruptions can be sometimes more disruptive than the very planned year-long deployment because, wow, well, I thought you were going to take, our son to soccer practice. And so, having that culture there, but, it's readiness starts at home. It always does, and oftentimes, you'll see that in, the successful warfighters, they've got their home front ready and are able to support them to go do that pop-up mission or go do whatever it is we ask of them.
What has working with military families taught you about resilience, sacrifice, or community that you think the rest of the country could learn from?
I'm constantly humbled every time I go out. I see military families, and no matter what the challenges, they rise to it. No matter what the challenges, they lean on each other. And, I think what's really cool, if you ever get the chance, and any of your listeners get the chance, go out to a remote military installation, and that could be overseas or even here in the U.S. There's a few of them that are on an island, and there's not much else around them. I think those of you who've done some of those, been stationed in some of those places, you're probably nodding right now. You know what I'm talking about. But the coolest thing you go and see is you'll go to these installations and you'll see that there's a family that is living in this neighborhood with all these other military families, and they're a tight-knit community. Just like any community, just like any family, there's drama, but they all lean on each other, they all rely on each other, and every one of them will fiercely defend each other against anything that comes their way and any challenge. And so I think what's amazing is you see, when one military family is in distress, the entire community will rise up around them. And I think unfortunately, the digital landscape that we find ourselves in, in 2026, as connected as we are as a society, we're also very disconnected from each other. And you may not even know your next door neighbor, but you won't see that on a military installation. Of course, that's a challenge for us right now. A lot of areas, stateside especially, we've got military families living further and further away from base. So we want to build that connectivity framework so they can still connect. But I'm constantly floored at the generosity, the empathy, the sheer loyalty that military families have with each other. And, and I see it every day. Even my wife, she'll be out, and, as soon as she sees another military spouse, they just start talking and they go and like, here's what's going on. And, there's a camaraderie that's shared, and, it's cool because, at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, and we're all, there's that shared sacrifice that the bonds are formed in, which is really cool. Doesn't mean we can't make it easier for them. We need to work on, supporting military families every day, but we recognize that sacrifice. And I think what's amazing to see is just how that sacrifice through service really strengthens the bonds of community there.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't go without highlighting the fact that it's military community and family. The community is such a big part of it, and everyone's in it together. So, Steve, this has been genuinely a very important conversation. I'm so grateful for your time and candor, and the work that your office does and the families it serves deserve far more visibility. And I hope this conversation changes that in some small way. So, thank you so, so much.
Well, Melissa, thank you. Thank you for letting me share the airwaves with you here today. And yeah, again, super important. Obviously, we could talk about this all day. So really appreciate you telling our story. And if you or anybody in the audience hasn't done so, find a military family member and thank them. They're incredible. Get to know them, and it's those little things that make all the difference.
Steve reminded us today that inside the U.S. military, there's an office that is listening, gathering real-time data, reaching out to families before they hit a breaking point, and building programs that meet military families where they are. Spouse employment programs, childcare access, counseling on every installation, a real and evolving commitment making every transition smoother than the last. The warrior ethos doesn't start at the base, it starts at home. And the Office of Military Community and Family Policy is making sure that home is ready. If you're a part of a military family, Military OneSource is available to you around the clock. Counseling, financial support, childcare resources, and so much more. We'll have a link in the show notes along with resources from today's conversation. Thank you for joining me on Empathy Affect, and thank you to our service members and their families this Military Appreciation Month. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review, follow us, and share the show with someone you appreciate serving our country. Thanks, y'all.
Empathy Effect is a product of Forrest Marsh. You can reach us at forrestmarshmedia@forrestmarsh.com with any feedback, questions, or inquiries. If you want to know more about today's guest, are interested in participating with Forrest Marsh, or becoming part of our community, check out our show notes for more information.